Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital, a podcast about video games and the stories they tell. I'm one of your hosts, Caitlin Bailey, and with me I have my co-host, Mark Bigney. Mark, how are you doing?
I am feeling great. I am ready to rock.
I am getting there. I am getting ready to rock.
Okay, well, I'm sure that talking about some games will get you there.
Yes, I think so. So, as always, we're going to talk about what we are currently playing, followed by our gaming opinions on old school funware segment, what we call GOOF with Perfect Dark. Then we're going to be getting started on our feature game, Gears of War Reloaded. And then, as always, we'll be shouting out games that we are looking forward to in the future. Mark, why don't you tell me what you've been playing lately?
I've been playing Marfusha Sentinel Girls. Now, before you hear the title and make certain assumptions about various qualities that this game may have, I assure you that this is not laden with fan service, despite the fact that it does involve anime girls wielding guns. Now, let me be perfectly clear as to why I decided to try Marfusha Sentinel Girls. I've been chasing a particular kind of dragon, and that dragon is the dragon of abuse. Specifically the 1996 PC game Abuse, which had a marvelous control scheme, which frankly I have not seen replicated elsewhere much, if at all, and that is one whereby you engage in platforming and action running around with your keyboard with arrow keys, and you aim with your mouse. And so it's a variation on twin-stick shooters. It's typically as a side-scrolling 2D affair, as opposed to a more top-down traditional twin-stick arrangement. I love all kinds of twin-stick gaming. I love your traditional Robotron variants. I even like Robotron. Actually, Smash TV, which is one of the most famous twin-stick arcade shooters, is the one I like the least. But anyway, I'm strange that way. But Abuse was a marvelous title, and I really, really like the control setup. And Marfusha Sentinel Girls has the same setup in that you use the arrow keys to control your character, and you aim with the mouse. And so I was very excited when I learned of its existence, and I decided to give it a try. And I don't like, Caitlin, ragging on super indie titles, but Marfusha Sentinel Girls was a crushing disappointment.
Aww.
It was extraordinarily dull. I was almost appalled at how dull the gameplay is. And frankly, given the higher ratings on Steam, I had a fair bit of cognitive dissonance while going through. And so I began to wonder, I'm not the guy here who wants the anime girls, but am I surrounded by dudes who do? So I was looking left, looking right, and starting to wonder about what kind of company I was keeping, albeit metaphorically. So, in Marfusha Sentinel Girls, you are guarding the gates of the city, and there are these waves of robots that approach you. And the way that the setup is, and this is the first crushing disappointment, there's no real reason to move. There's not a whole lot of motion involved in Marfusha Sentinel Girls. You're just standing there. And because all the enemies are coming at you at relatively fixed patterns, there's not a whole lot of aiming.
Okay.
Normally, again, referring back to Abuse, yes, a 30-year-old game, but you can get it on Portmaster. Anything that runs Portmaster, any of your little handheld emulation devices, any of your Ambernicks, or any of that nature that run Portmaster, you can get Abuse. It tends to run marvelously. Because you're moving around, and because your enemies are moving around, that requires a certain amount of aiming by virtue of both these elements of motion. And it was quite taxing as a consequence. I enjoyed it. It was a great kind of frenetic atmosphere, but it gave you a control scheme where you always felt in control. I will perhaps return to this notion when discussing our later games Perfect Dark and Gears of War Reloaded. But anyway, in Marfusha, because you're not moving, that removes some of the elements of chaos. And because the enemies are just going at a straight line, it's not really much of an interesting moving target. It's just the kind of thing where, okay, I can't really give them enough lead time, so I'll just wait until they stop moving because they're all swarming this base. They don't even attack you. They're just doing damage to this wall that has this giant health bar.
Okay.
And so frequently, I would be in one of two positions. Either there was a swarm of flyers, in which case I just aim straight up, or there was a swarm of things walking along the ground, in which case I just aim parallel to the ground. Compounding this is the fact that I was initially a little bit concerned. I play a lot of indie games that are a little bit older, although Marfusha Sentinel Girls is only from 2021. But even games of that era, or some highly, highly indie games that are even being published now, they don't even allow you a full screen option. Or in the case of Artists, there's a full screen option, but they tell you not to use it because it doesn't really work very well. That was an interesting approach that Artists Impact took. Anyway, in this context, though, full screen works great, but if it allows your mouse cursor to go outside the range of what full screen is because I have an ultra wide monitor. And when it does that, it does not register your mouse inputs at all. And so sometimes I would just cease firing and like, why am I not? Oh, right. It's because my cursor's outside the window. This happened to me at least half a dozen times.
Oh my God.
And that wasn't super great either. One thing that's kind of cool is that between every mission, you get paid and you use that money to buy a suite of upgrades. And so the game describes itself as having a roguelite structure. This is a lie insofar as there's no permadeath, there's no notion of randomized runs. There's just this idea of iterative upgrades that you get between every level. So fine. I mean, I'm not gonna put them in roguelite jail. Just that's the only element that's even vaguely reminiscent of a roguelite at all. I fear now that we're stretching the term past any useful recognition, but whatever.
Yeah.
Neither the roguelite police nor the word police will be summoned. So there's no platforming, there's hardly any movement, there's hardly any aiming. What are you left with? Well, not much. You're just standing there holding down the fire button. You even reload automatically. There I am holding down the fire button being like, this is not at all what I signed up for. And
yeah.
The only interesting part of Marfusha Sentinel Girls is there's kind of a hidden satire of taxation going on. Because what happens is you get your pay, and that's some number that doesn't mean anything. Because then what happens is there's this escalating series of state-mandated taxes that get pulled from your income. Some of them are really absurd. Like there's one that was specifically the low income tax, which is an additional tax that's levied on people that have small incomes.
Oh,
like, wow.
Ouch.
Explicitly regressive tax. I don't know if this is conscious satire or not, but at least I found it amusing.
Yeah.
And that element was kind of cool. So your nominal pay for a level will be something like $60, and your take-home pay will be something like $3. And it's just really hyperbolically absurd. The net effect of it is that you never really know how much money you're going to get from a given mission. You kind of have to intuit it, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. And that was honestly the only real ray of light. So in this hyper indie game, normally I come in with pretty low expectations. I paid about $5 for it. I'm not going to hold it against Marfusha Sentinel Girls for not being abuse. All right. But I wanted some element of, interesting gameplay related to either run and gun or twin stick or anything.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any of that. It was just hold down the button. I think they wanted to make a tower defense game. Maybe they thought they were making a cool hybridization of action, run, gun, and tower defense, but really it ended up having the benefits of neither.
Okay.
Just utterly bland and just not engaging at all. The visuals were kind of okay. It's not super cutesy, but it's also not super sexualized either, so the art style is fine. So whatever dirty thoughts you have about the representation in Marfusha Sentinel Girls, you can stow it, because at least in the few hours that I played, there was nothing even remotely objectionable, other than sending young people to the front to war, but that too could be regarded as part of the sort of subtle dystopian thing that Marfusha Sentinel Girls has got going on. But sadly, I came looking for a replication of a particular experience. Failing that, I was hoping for at least something resembling, because I like shooters of all kinds. I like running and gunning, I like the running, I like the jumping, I like all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, Marfusha Sentinel Girls just didn't have anything to recommend itself to me personally, and I'm surprised that so many other people seem to like it. And it just left me with a sense of crushing disappointment. But don't worry, this episode is going to have an arc, and the arc is one of improvement.
Okay. That's optimism.
Well, we're starting out low. We're establishing a floor.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, the pixel art looks cute.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
But yeah, I haven't played Marfusha Sentinel Girls, and I'm also feeling disappointed just because I could hear how psyched you were at the prospect of maybe finding something that would help, that would be closer to abuse, and that's too bad. I
was completely unprepared for how static everything was. It was so striking. And as a last note, yes, the pixel art is nice, but, and this is again more in the category of criticisms for which I'm inclined to be more sympathetic towards very small indie games, there's almost no animation to speak of. The robots just go from left to right. Some of them have a very crude walking animation, but some of them are just flying left to right or jumping and don't have any jumping animation, fine. And the main character doesn't have any reloading animation, for example. It's just an audio cue that they're reloading their gun. And so effectively all you get to see the main character do is walk left to right. But again, not even much of that.
Mostly stand in place and shoot things.
mostly staying in place, and you see the little pixelized rotation of her aiming the gun in a vaguely 180-degree arc.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Okay. Well, they can't all be bangers.
Sadly, this is true. That could be the subtitle to our humble podcast. What have you been up to lately, Caitlin?
Lately, I've been playing Peak. Peak is a co-op game that came out a few months ago, and it had a pretty big boom of popularity. So I assume that a lot of people have heard of it. And you can technically play solo, but I don't know why you would put yourself through that. But I think it's best experienced in like a 4-player co-op with friends situation. But the gist of Peak is that you are a scout, your friends are scouts, and you're on a plane, and that plane unfortunately crashes, and you end up on a deserted island. And your only hope of rescue is to make it to the mountain at the center. And to the top of the mountain, naturally, because it's called Peak.
Are there conches involved? Are there pig heads involved? How Lord of the Flies are we talking here?
The very first item that I saw on the beach was a conch shell. And I was like, okay, Lord of the Flies, let's go.
Sweet.
They don't go in that direction. I was told that shell is useless, throw it away. So I did. So the main mechanic in Peak is stamina. You have 1 stamina bar, and basically everything under the sun, sometimes including the sun, will affect that stamina bar. So if you take damage, that will basically use up a portion of your stamina bar permanently, or not permanently, but until that damage is healed. Hunger will slowly take up a larger and larger portion of your stamina bar. If you get burnt, then fire, like there will be a fire section of your stamina bar, which will slowly over time dissipate until it goes away completely, which is nice. But basically, every status effect is going to take up some space on your bar. Hunger, injuries, all of it uses up part of your stamina bar, and your stamina bar is the only way you're able to do anything because you need to climb a lot of things in Peak. Helping to offset this is items that you find. So one of the main ways to find loot on the island in Peak is there is luggage strewn everywhere from presumably the plane that you crashed from.
Sure.
And you can find the luggage, open it up, and they'll generally have 1 or 2 items inside. So some examples are like a first aid kit, airline food, which is like a cute little like almost like a frozen meal, except obviously it's not frozen. But, you know, a little prepackaged meal. One of the best items of food in Peak is the airline food, especially if you're able to heat it up. I guess that's because it's better than, you know, finding a random berry on the ground and eating it and hoping that it's not poisonous. But yeah, otherwise, like basically all you have at your disposal is stuff that you find on the island. So sometimes that is a random berry that you found on a bush and you really hope it's not poisonous. Other times it's stuff that you found in the luggage. But the goal is to make it through, I want to say, 4 biomes in order to get to the Peak. So the worst thing about Peak is that you can't pause it. You can't stop in the middle. These are 2-hour minimum runs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's rough. I mean, maybe if you're really good at Peak, you can get done earlier, but all of the runs that we've had that have not tragically ended early have been very long. And it's rough because if you have to go AFK, your hunger is slowly going to be climbing up. If one of your friends goes AFK, you either have to decide to abandon them or you have to wait around for them. Like,
this is Lord of the Flies.
It's rough. And you get a little bit of a reset. At the end of each biome, there will be a campfire, and there's helpfully like some marshmallows on sticks that have already been set up for you. And also at each campfire, if any of your friends have perished, you can resurrect them at each campfire. But yeah, it's been really fun. It's like a kind of a collaborative climbing thing. You'll get climbing items that can try to help you. Like you'll get, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but a piton or a python. That you can, like, attach to the...
Piton, I think.
Piton? Okay, man. My 2 attempts were probably incorrect. But you can attach it to the side of the mountain, and if you do, that means when your friends are climbing up, they'll be able to rest there and regain some stamina. There's ropes you can lower down. You can also kind of just... If you hold down right-click or some button on the controller, doesn't really matter. but you'll reach your hand down toward your friends who are still climbing, and you can help boost them up the last, couple feet without using up their stamina. So there's a bunch of ways that you can help your friends who have lower stamina, either because they've gotten hurt or they're carrying a lot of heavy stuff. And it makes it into a really fun cooperative game. It's not just a game where there's 4 people who are individually climbing up a mountain. If you all want to make it to the peak, you have to actually cooperate. So yeah, it's been really fun. We have not made it to the peak yet. We made it to the final area once, and we all died tragically. But yeah.
Didn't Expedition 64 or something put handholds everywhere?
You would think so, but I think they missed this island.
I remember when I first was exposed to the fundamental game structure of League of Legends, and I thought that a 45-minute match was an unreasonable demand on one's time.
Yeah.
And it certainly seems like that has established a baseline. Like a lot of primarily online, unpausable games. Like a mission in Helldivers is often 30-ish minutes.
Yeah.
A run in Elden Ring Night Rain is often 30 to 40 minutes. And for what it's worth, I still think that demanding an unpausable session to be 30 to 40 minutes, even when alone, is a little unreasonable.
Yeah.
But 2 hours, that's wild.
Yeah. So during my first or second game of Peak, one of my friends had to go AFK, and we're all just twiddling our thumbs, watching our stamina get lower. Like,
yeah.
Thinking like, well, we probably shouldn't just leave him here, because he's never played before. Like, he's gonna get lost, or, he's gonna die, and then he's like, okay, so I guess we're just waiting. And the waiting hurts a lot less when you can just pause the game, or hell, allow me to just save after a campfire and then return in the exact same state to that same campfire. Why can't we do that? I really hope that they add that, because it is crazy to me to expect people to be able to do a 2-hour-long uninterrupted run.
Yeah, I'm not even going to give you grief about playing online with your real friends on that, because I don't want to sign up for a 2-hour activity of anything like that. That sounds like too much of a commitment, man. I can't promise that I'm going to want to be around people 90 minutes from starting an activity. That's just insane. I exaggerate. I routinely do things longer than that with people all the time. But I have a similar experience. Those who have been reading the newsletter know that I've still been playing a lot of Elden Ring Night Rain. But because I have no friends, I've mostly been playing solo. And I've gotten a lot better. I can routinely get to the final boss when playing solo. I can't kill the final boss. I came close a couple times. But just as the boss of day 2 was starting, there was a knock at the door, so I had to go receive a package and sign some documents. I figured, okay, there's no way, no chance. I heard dimly the incredibly unpleasant sound of my vibration motor rumbling against the top of my desk. You know that noise. It's awful. It's a terrible noise.
Yeah.
And to my shock, I came back and then almost beat the boss after having been away for a while and it just wailing on me unopposed. So,
wow.
Anyway, that's my story of going AFK.
That's incredible that you were able to get back and nearly rescue that run.
I'm starting to think that I might kind of understand parts of the game. That's as far as I'm willing to go.
Starting to think you might kind of understand. It's a start.
I'm fundamentally a Platonist when it comes to wisdom. I think the only wisdom consists in acknowledging that you have none.
Sure.
Or as T.S. Eliot would say, the only wisdom we can hope to aspire is that of humility. Humility is endless.
Of course, I need to mention my favorite thing about Peak before we move on. One of my friends fell a long distance, and I, being a good person, or attempting to be a good person, decided to climb back down to help him. So I climbed down, I was helping him gather up his stuff, and I was looking for a place to go up, and he said, "Oh, you look like a roast chicken." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "It says E to eat." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to try it." And then I instantly became a skeleton, and he healed the fall. So I guess when you're hungry enough in Peak, your friends will look like roast chicken out of our Looney Tune cartoon or something.
Wow, that's horrifying.
Yeah, yeah, but it was really funny. It was a little shocking. I wasn't expecting to become a tiny little skeleton.
Especially given the graphical style of Peak.
Yes,
I would not have expected comedic cannibalism to
me
be on the
either.
menu, but
But it
here we are.
definitely was. Yep. Okay, with that, we can move on to our gaming opinions on old school funware segment, what we call GOOF, with Perfect Dark. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about Perfect Dark?
Let me tell you my story, Caitlin.
Okay.
When Perfect Dark was released, or shortly before it was released, I was working for Nintendo. This was my summer job with them, and I worked promotions. And as part of my second summer with Nintendo, we were prepping for the launch of Perfect Dark because it being the Nintendo 64, pretty much the only titles that it could boast about were first party titles and rare titles. So Perfect Dark was expected to be a massive deal, especially on the heels of 1997's GoldenEye. And so we were invited to play an early access version of the game. And we played just a whole bunch of multiplayer in this weird, like, hotel conference room thing. And I remember that it was all French Canadians except for me, the token Anglo, and then we had a new token Anglo on the team,
Okay.
whose name they decided to, Mark was okay. French people can say Mark, but they decided to really test the limits of my French Canadian colleagues by hiring a very, very nice individual named Crofton. And listening to French Canadians attempt to say his name was a source of great amusement to me. But at any rate, we played a whole bunch of Perfect Dark. I had not played a bunch of GoldenEye, but at least I was a pretty committed video gamer at the time. Crofton had played a bunch of GoldenEye, so he was schooling us the entire time. And then the rest of my colleagues were, too cool to play video games, and had been hired for their various social aptitudes rather than any knowledge, interest, or indeed respect for the products that they would be flogging. So they were mostly what we would call chum. At any rate, good times with Perfect Dark. I remember the weird weapons, the strange, like we were just thrown in and told to just play a whole bunch of multiplayer. And so we kind of were experimenting with the weapons as we went. And I remember very fondly that day. It was probably my only time of interacting with the Nintendo 64 as it was intended. That is to say, with a whole bunch of friends playing local multiplayer. Because that was definitely the N64's strong suit, regardless of whatever you think its merits are or demerits in other areas. That's absolutely something it was designed for. And in Perfect Dark, you can play 4-player split-screen multiplayer just like you could in GoldenEye 007. Anyway, Perfect Dark is a first-person shooter designed rather a lot around local multiplayer. Published by the legendary Rare, which was pretty much a second-party developer at that point. An abbreviated history of Rare is as follows. In 1991, they released Battletoads, the infamously unfair beat-em-up. In 94, they released the arcade version of Killer Instinct. 1995 saw Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo, which was a really good platformer. 1997 was GoldenEye, and in 1998, they definitely solidified the tchotchke collecting genre with Banjo-Kazooie. And my experience with Rare is a fraught one. Like, I thought that Killer Instinct was kind of okay. I enjoyed Battletoads. I liked Donkey Kong Country, but the rest of their offerings, not huge fan of. What about you, Caitlin?
I want to say I pretty much only played the Donkey Kong Country games by Rare, but I played them to death.
Oh, okay. Since we're talking about the memories of my misspent youth while we're at it, I do remember getting Donkey Kong Country for Christmas, as well as a massive quantity of M&Ms. And every time I would die in Donkey Kong Country while the level was reloading, I would have a few M&Ms. I went through them pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do remember enjoying that game a fair bit, and I've gone back to it a couple times in emulation. It holds up. So you were never I associate this activity with a certain kind of a video gamer, the same kind of video gamer that plays a lot of Halo and or Madden. This is a stereotype. Stereotypes are bad. I don't want to stereotype gamers, especially since a lot of people are subject to negative stereotypes in the gaming community. But I don't believe that lots of local GoldenEye multiplayer is in your gaming history. Or am I wrong?
No, I never played GoldenEye. I never played Perfect Dark. I also never played Killer Instinct, although I was aware of it. I believe my family had a copy, but that wasn't what I played. I mostly just died a lot in the minecart level of Donkey Kong Country.
Yes. So, what did you think of Perfect Dark?
So, I mean, I've been thinking about this for a couple of days because I feel like my opinion of Perfect Dark is what's going to get me canceled as a video gamer. But I found myself wondering whether it is possible for me to like one of these like old console first person shooters if I didn't play them back in the day.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, like at first, like the very first thing I did when I opened up Perfect Dark is I selected the very first option on the menu, and it's like, okay, I'm a guy, and I'm going to give you a tour of our facility. And then eventually I realized, oh, this isn't actually the game. I need
Yeah.
to exit out of here and go to the solo missions. So, whoops. But then I was in a solo mission, and I was desperately trying to just shoot a guy, and I must have shot around him 8 million times. Eventually I did shoot him and I was like, that seems like it was a lot harder than it should have been. I sure wish that I could aim with the Nintendo 64 controller.
The auto aim didn't take care of it for you?
So later I definitely noticed it helping significantly. But early on, I didn't, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I was aiming so ridiculously poorly that it couldn't help me, or if the enemies were a little bit too far away for it to be able to help me efficiently. But that it was a bad time.
Yeah, so here's the deal. Old first-person shooters do indeed feel terrible because we have now settled on a control scheme basically across most 3D genres, be they first or third person, as to how movement works.
Yeah.
And in fairness to Perfect Dark, number one, the N64 controller isn't built for that kind of movement scheme.
No. Yeah.
So you're going to have to engage some kind of clutch involving the C buttons or something. But on the other hand, Alien Trilogy, which is the first main example, there may have been previous ones, but one of the first mainstream examples of the sort of quote-unquote modern control scheme, was released in 1996 for the PlayStation. All right?
Oh.
So the model existed for 4 years before Perfect Dark got published. Now, the way that Perfect Dark mostly compensates for that is the auto-aiming system. Because you're mostly just moving with the stick, and the stick involves forward movement, backward movement, and turning left and right. Strafing is handled by a button, looking up is handled very erratically by a button, and looking down is handled very erratically by a button. And to its credit, most of the time Perfect Dark tries to intuit whether you want to be looking up or down.
Yeah.
It's mostly disorienting and it mostly doesn't work, but it tries. It's hard, it's in the right place.
Yes.
So all those videos, I remember seeing videos of people playing 007 GoldenEye thinking, wow, these people are really good at holding down the shoulder button and in initiating manual aiming. No, that was the auto aim taking care of it for them. So consequently, it doesn't feel a whole heck of a lot like first-person shooter. Going back, so I agree with you, it's rough. You're mostly just, your job is to get the target in the vicinity and then wait for the auto aim to click. And then you shoot the guy, because I couldn't be bothered doing the manual aiming. It's too wild.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, assuming, once again, I will not pass up this opportunity to point out the fact that 99% of the Nintendo 64 controllers had stick drift and floppy sticks the moment you activated them. But setting all that aside, getting used to the controls was a bit of a challenge. I actually found the graphics more jarring than anything else. Because the head models in Perfect Dark are so nightmarish to me. Because the resolution is just good enough, and the digitization technology is just good enough for it to be utterly grotesque. And you have these strange, misshapen pictures, like dragged over a polygonal skull, with no lip movement or anything. And it's this dead-eye stare. It's so bizarre.
Oh, I'm sure part of this, not even part, I'm sure a great deal of this issue also is because, like, I maybe don't have the best sense of direction. I was realizing that especially during Expedition 33 without the map, but I felt like I was having a really hard time finding my way around in Perfect Dark because I was constantly like, okay, this looks an awful lot like that other room, but I'm pretty sure it's a different room. I think it's a different room. And I go through the door and I'm like, oh, yes, it was a different room. Or nope, it was definitely the same one that you thought you were in a minute ago. in the first level, there's this elevator that you can't control at all. You just walk on, and it's like, okay, I'm going to the next programmed floor. And that threw me off, too, because the first time I got on it, like, I didn't get off because there were enemies and I was shooting them, and then it just closed, and I'm like, okay. And then it stopped at a floor. I got out, assuming it was the floor I'd just been on. It was not. I learned that pretty quickly, but I was like, this doesn't look quite like I remember.
I'm willing to blame the level design and the incredibly uninspired environment graphics.
Yeah, they're rough.
Everything looks the same because it is the same. There's a very parsimonious set of models. Like, remember one of the complaints I had about Jussin? About how there's just detritus everywhere? But I would take Jussin, like the modern excesses of a game like Jussin, or indeed of Gears of War Reloaded, over this any day of the week, because at least I can recognize one place from the other. I was reminded of, like, turn of the century, giant rooms with just bare walls with just the texture put on top of it and nothing else.
Yeah.
And they seem very pleased with it. I have to assume that's because the sort of initial selection on the first player menu is to get this tour of their facility, which is another sort of barren, empty, repetitive set of the same texture pack over and over.
Yeah.
But it is disorienting in the extreme, as well as decidedly visually unappealing.
Yeah, I was having a very difficult time remembering what areas I had gone before, what I hadn't. Because, yeah, everything looked quite samey. And often my main clue was, oh, there's bloodstains there, so I definitely killed a guy over that way. So those are like the best markers.
Yeah, encountering an enemy is the best, most reassuring thing ever because you know you're in the right place.
The levels were also a lot less interactive than I thought. Like, the first time I came across a computer, I was like, okay, sweet, let's do some computer stuff. And the screen's like, green code or whatever. But no, there's nothing. You cannot do a single thing. And I found it really difficult to figure out what I could interact with versus what I couldn't interact with. I think it was usually lighting related. But yeah, it was bizarre.
One really gets the sense, or at least I did, that Perfect Dark is straining against the hardware limitations of the Nintendo 64 because the frame rate is erratic. Even when playing on original hardware, the frame rate is erratic. The system can't quite manage it. And they tried desperately to make the game playable without the RAM expansion pack. I read on Wikipedia that a rough estimate is that 35% of the game is playable without the expansion pack. None of it being the single-player campaign. I respect the desire to really eke out every last marginal element of a hardware, but if you can't get this to run properly... Now, all of that having been said, I seem to have enjoyed Perfect Dark a lot more than you did. And I can't claim any nostalgia because I didn't play the single-player campaign at all.
Yeah, just the multiplayer.
Yeah, just the multiplayer. I kind of liked the simple gadgets. Like every couple time, like there's like, okay, use this gadget because the room is irradiated. I'm like, this is kind of silly, but neat. It helps sell the theme of being some sort of future sci-fi operative thing. Definitely better than any of the dialogue did. Woof. Because uninspired and kind of bad. I also really liked the multiplayer. Like, you can set up a room with a bunch of bots, and they will give you a run for your money, or at least a run for my money. I'm sure it's no replication of an actual experience, but I was running around with bots and, like, finding new weapons and trying them out. And the guns are really cool. They all have an alternate fire mode. My favorite has got to be the dragon. Did you ever play around with a dragon?
No, I never tried the multiplayer. Meaning, I'm sure it's in the single player too, but...
Yeah, it's in the single-player campaign. So every gun has an alternate fire mode, and some of them are really weird. So, like, the strangest gun, and a lot of people know this, is the Farsight, which is a gun that will shoot through any number of walls. And when you engage the secondary firing mode, you engage an infrared scope. And so you can see everybody in the map and shoot through walls. The problem is that your aim speed drops to very, very, very slow.
Okay.
So... it's very easy to evade if someone knows they're in danger, but the thing is that suddenly the entire map is a danger zone with the Farsight. That's cool. There's a laptop gun, which is definitely inspired by any number of cyberpunk and cyberpunk adjacent shows, movies, comics, etc. that can be turn itself into a sentry.
Okay.
The dragon that I mentioned, its alternate fire mode is you just drop the dragon and all the ammo associated with it, and it is now a proximity mine.
Okay.
So someone is running around on a map, they see a dragon on the floor, they see a gun, it's like, oh, I'll pick that up, boom. It's great.
Oh my god. That's amazing. I mean, it definitely sounds like they decided to get kind of creative with all the guns in Perfect Dark.
Totally. And I fired up a couple rooms, populated with bots, and had a good time. I was shocked to have this impulse. The moment I had the thought, I then had the sort of out-of-body experience thinking, did you really just have that thought, Mark? And I looked back at myself and was like, I guess I did. And at that point, there must have been like 5 of me hypothetically talking to each other. I wouldn't mind hooking up an emulation device to a TV and inviting some friends over and having some local multiplayer. This isn't bad. And I don't know if there are people who swear by the single-player missions or what. It just felt an awful lot like an afterthought and much less interesting than the multiplayer elements. And even though I was enjoying it more than you were, and I was letting the auto-aim do its thing and just running around, I had 2 serious misgivings, one of which I was able to power through, the other which I wasn't. Mm-hmm. The misgiving I was able to power through is kind of a double-edged sword. The death animations were really good. Like, the character models looked terrible, but I thought they animated really well when the frame rate was holding up.
Yeah.
And it made me not want to shoot people, because it made me feel bad for them.
Oh, no.
Well, no, it really did. Like, you'd just hit them with a pistol and they'd, stagger around like they were really in pain. I'm like, oh, I don't feel good about myself having done this.
Yeah.
I didn't need to murder Ted for just doing some security gig for this evil corporation. What's Ted got to do? Ted's got 3 kids and his partner left him. Ted's just trying to put food on the table, and I shot Ted in the groin. Well, I didn't really even shoot Ted in the groin.
Unbelievable.
The auto-aim got him to the groin, but I got to watch him stagger around in his last seconds, and it's a whole thing. And I've got Ted's on his conscience, and Ted 3 kids, Olivia, Newton, and John. Yeah, he had a weird thing with his naming scheme, but that's not a reason for Ted to die.
You're right, it's not. I mostly, when faced with these staggering animations, was like, oh, not dead yet, I better make sure. And then
it's still thrashing around, shoot him some more.
Put a couple more in, he needs to stop moving.
The thing that I was not willing to power through and brought my experience with the campaign mode of Perfect Dark to an abrupt end was the bugbear of many a 20th century game, Caitlin. Some 21st century games did this too, but the bugbear of many a 20th century game, the escort mission. And so here I was escorting somebody, and they didn't have the good sense to wait around the corner when there was a firefight. I got notified that they died. I'm like, that's it, we're done.
It's like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. Life is too short, and I'm happy to play around with the multiplayer stuff, but I've seen the campaign now. If you're going to make me do an escort mission with someone with no sense of self-preservation, sorry, no mas.
Yeah, I feel like escort missions got a deservedly bad rap early on, because they were all universally bad. It's like you're just escorting people who have no will to live whatsoever and just throw themselves into danger constantly. And nowadays, I feel like more modern game design has been like, oh yeah, like people generally don't want to die, so maybe they shouldn't run out into the middle of a firefight. So it's gotten a lot better. But yeah, it's something to play one of these old games and be like, oh yeah, escort missions are terrible.
Really bad. So that's Perfect Dark. Great multiplayer, I maintain. A little bit too ambitious for the N64, I think. And boo to escort missions, that's for sure.
Yeah, playing Perfect Dark now had me thinking like, man, like Perfect Dark has such like a good reputation in general, like across people who play video games. Why hasn't there been another one? I realize there technically has been like a Perfect Dark 2 or whatever ages ago, but like a modern reboot. So I'm looking and I was like, oh, there was one, and everybody got laid off and the game was canceled last year. So, okay.
Yeah, there's a surprising number of Perfect Dark fans, and they're very upset that the game got canceled. And on top of that, there are other people who are just independently enthusiastic about the project, and they're very upset too.
Yeah.
And all that upset and outrage and 95 cents will get you a Snickers bar at Dollarama.
With that, we're going to take a break for some ads, and we'll be right back. And we're back. All right, so now we're going to go into our feature title, Gears of War Reloaded.
There's only one way to start this, Caitlin. Let's do this.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Gears of War Reloaded?
Okay, so the first Gears of War was developed by Epic Games and was an Xbox 360 exclusive. It was published in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. Since then, there have been several updates of the original Gears of War title, and there have been many, many sequels and spin-offs, up to and including Gears of War Tactics, which was very much unlike Gears of War, but at the same time was completely like Gears of War. And so most recently, we have from The Coalition, with original credit to Epic Games, Gears of War Reloaded, which is bringing Gears of War not only to current hardware, but also the first cross-platform Gears title, since Microsoft has decided to not really so much be a console publisher as a cross-platform games publisher thing. I can't really complain too much because mostly the games that I get associated with Xbox are in my head free, even though I give them $20 a month, but it is what it is. So, I have a sort of analogy to what Gears of War is.
Okay.
I hope you will indulge me. Gears of War is like concrete. In one way that I'd like to emphasize now, and that is that it's concrete when initially introduced as a building material. It was a genuinely innovative technology that allowed people to do things in ways that they had never done things before.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to an entire movement called brutalism, which, fun fact, is not because the things that they made looked brutal, but because in French, concrete is called concret brut. And so it's just a French word meaning made out of concrete. But anyway, setting all that aside. Now, did this lead to incredibly poor executions on the form and a lot of ugly concrete buildings? Absolutely. But there are some genuinely good examples of brutalist architecture. And then, of course, there are things that basically look like bunkers. And that's not terribly great. Similarly, Gears of War wasn't the first, but definitely was an incredibly epical instance of the cover-based shooter. Mm-hmm. And coincidentally, that involves a lot of waist-high concrete installations to hide behind. It also is informing the color palette because everything looks like the same shade of gray, and because all the characters in Gears of War look like slabs of concrete, and certainly have the emotional range and depth of that as well. So Gears of War spawned... for every sequel it had, it inspired many, many more also-rans and derivatives, some of which were real bad, and some of which were just incredibly lazy and by the numbers. But so many of the formulaic elements of Gears of War have become really ingrained in a lot of gaming, not just AAA gaming, not just third-person shooters, but everywhere. Regenerating health, certainly not invented by Gears of War. The Halo games have done that before, but it definitely popularized it further. Little, tiny... QuickTime events for reloading. No QuickTime events during the game. Mm-hmm. Nothing like that. They were moving away from the God of War paradigm. But suddenly reloading was a little QuickTime minigame by itself. Cover shooting, weird and outre weapons. Again, a nod to a little bit about what Perfect Dark was doing, but Gears of War did it again. As well as leaning into the sort of dark and dismal and sludgy kind of color palette. How much of that was hardware? How much of that was design elements? I don't know. But there was definitely a lot of this era that environmentally doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. So, as I say, I think the metaphor for what Gears of War is that it is concrete. Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
I'm glad. So I played Gears of War when it first came out. I got it for Christmas as a younger lad. For reasons passing understanding, my parents got me the deluxe version that was in like a steelbook with like a little art thing. Okay. And I remember when I opened it, I said, oh, the deluxe version, I hope I like it. I played the crap out of Gears of War. I finished the campaign on every single difficulty level. I never played online, though, because even at that time, I don't play games online. But I played the campaign over and over and over and over and over again. I did a little bit of local co-op, but just played endless amounts of Gears of War and loved it. Did you ever play it when it first came out?
Yeah, so the first time I ever saw Gears of War is, so I lived in like this townhouse in college with my boyfriend and two other guys, and I remember walking into the living room and seeing one of them playing Gears of War on, I think it was his Xbox, because I don't think I had an Xbox back then, but he was playing it on the Xbox on the TV, and I was just like, holy crap, that game looks awesome. Like, it looks really good. And I just remember, like, watching the character move and seeing, like, the motion blur. I just thought it looked really good. And I hadn't seen a game that looked like that before. And as soon as I found out that there was local co-op, I was like, okay, Chris, we're playing this. So we did. We played through the entire campaign, and I loved every second of it. And I don't know why. Because you look at Marcus and Dom, and they of course grew on me over the course of playing Gears of War, but they are not exactly I don't know, they're concrete dudes. Like they're huge and yeah.
Marcus Phoenix, this is one aspect. We'll talk about how well or badly various gameplay elements have aged in
Yes.
Gears of War to the transition of Gears of War Reloaded. Visually, Marcus Phoenix is just a parody of himself. He's got the little soul patch. He's got the do-rag on his head. He's absurd. He is facially ridiculous. Even setting aside the unreasonable proportions of his concrete slab-like body,
Yeah.
I cannot take him seriously at any time. The
No.
voice, the scars, the ridiculous... I just can't. Everyone else, Dom, Cole, and Baird.
Yeah.
Okay, Baird's got his own problem. The goggles, also a soul patch. 2 soul patches. 4 squad members, 2 soul patches. That is too many soul patches in a 4-person squad. You need to have a 7-person squad minimum before you get your first soul patch, and you need 10 squad members after that before you get your second. These are the rules. I have just made them up. I'm not willing to budge. And
Fair.
the goggles. All of that having been said, and I'm just so curious to hear how you feel about it. I remember the writing and the characterization of these slabs of concrete being just good enough for the thing that they're doing, which is to say, dumb blockbuster.
Yeah.
That is the genre. I don't think anyone could dispute. I put it in the same category. I've got all the analogies today. I would put it in the same category as like Fast and Furious movies. There is pleasure to be had in some of the better Fast and Furious movies, right?
Yeah.
It's still dumb. Even when it's good, it's dumb. Sometimes it's at its best when it's dumb. And there's one line in particular that I remember thinking is actually kind of decent and representative of the kind of dumb blockbuster genre. That is when Marcus and Baird are bickering.
Mm-hmm.
When they meet, they hate each other immediately. And Baird resents the fact that Phoenix is in command, which makes no sense because he'd been in prison 5 seconds earlier. The plot is stupid. The plot makes no sense.
Yeah,
it's a series of MacGuffins with a strange prison thing and a weird father thing that is never explained in this game. I had to go look up a wiki to remind myself what the hell was going on because they don't bother explaining all of it. I think they go back to it in Gears of War 3. I can't remember. But anyway.
Okay.
At one point in between Marcus and Baird insulting each other, Cole says, "Oh, it's kind of cute." And then Dom says, "Yeah, like 2 assholes on their first date."
Yes.
I love that line. It's great.
It was cute.
And there's just something about it. It's so dumb. It's just dumb concrete, but it's well done dumb concrete, I think.
Mm-hmm. Baird's ridiculousness charmed me immediately. I love how like upset he is about everything at all times in like a like defiant kind of way. He cracks me up. And Cole and his Cole Train thing, like it's too much, and I love all of it. Like all the characters grow on me so much despite who and what they are.
Dominic Santiago, they just portray him as like generic slab of concrete. If anything, he has the least personality of all of them.
I mean, his personality is sad about his missing wife.
Yes, but we don't even know that it's his missing wife until late in the game. But anyway,
you're right, yeah.
Setting all that aside, I do remember the absurdly melodramatic scene in a Gears, I think, 3 involving Dom. I think they set it to Mad World. It's so ridiculous. Anyway. So I found myself at the time being a much younger dude, being like, yeah, Gears of War is great. And now, replaying it, I'm like, I'm being charmed against my will. This is...
Yeah?
Okay, so we're on the same page. Gears of War Reloaded is dumb, but kind of charming. In terms of its characterization, its quote-unquote dialogue.
I mean, it took me back to, that 2006, 2007... time playing with Chris, and I'm still playing with Chris, and I'm getting my just can't quit you Dom achievements because I've been playing Dom, and I love every second of it. Somehow, Gears of War Reloaded looks and sounds exactly like I remember Gears of War looking. I am unsure how accurate that could possibly be because I'm on modern hardware now and not an Xbox 360, and I have not looked yet at Gears of War stuff, but it looks exactly like I imagined that it did back then. In a good way. Like, oh, it looks so good, blah, blah, blah.
Well, this raises an important question. I am not entirely certain how much nostalgia is influencing my evaluation of Gears of War Reloaded.
That's fair.
Like, in particular, I will defend Gears of War on a mechanical level. I think the shooting mechanisms, the cover, it's all very, very well done.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that so many games copied it ineffectually doesn't really dampen its luster, especially now, 20 years later, that we're on the other side of that kind of trend and we're able to experience the good version again after we've moved past a lot of those gameplay conventions because, again, they were overdone. I'm a little less confident I'd say the same about the writing and characterization because, I don't know, tough to be certain.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that since you talked about the graphical overhaul, because obviously there must be, it's at a much higher resolution, and they've changed a whole lot about the graphics engine. I would say to people who have experienced the original, don't worry, all the original bugs are still there, and they've introduced new ones. So my favorite original bug, and I don't know if you've encountered this, is the I'm going to kick down the door like a massive burly man animation gets triggered, but it gets triggered a couple inches too soon, and so Marcus doesn't actually kick the door, he kicks air, and then you have to shuffle forward a little bit and kick the door again.
No, I didn't see that. That's amazing.
Oh, it happens to me all the time. Squad mates behaving in incredibly stupid ways and showing up where they literally couldn't have been. My favorite is when you open up a locked door and you see Dom running through the door, being like, oh, hey, where you been? Which is not, that makes zero sense. That's fine.
Yeah.
But now there's great new bugs that I don't remember from 20 years ago. New bits of terrain that cause you to get hung up and you can't move past, which is wonderful. It's like a couple inches worth of pipe and you're supposed to be able to walk over it, but I get hung up on it and that's great. Your teammates getting locked in perpetual death animations because it's not a combat scene, so they don't stay down, but they're still like standing in fire or where there's krill, so they just die over and over and over and over again and rezzing themselves. I don't remember that happening in the original, so that's a new bug. So it's good to know that there's technical progress at 20 years.
Yeah. I suspect that not seeing some of those, maybe because we were playing co-op, so we only had 0 to 2 other non-player characters with us. The most jarring thing for me playing Gears of War Reloaded, and I have no idea if this was a problem in the original or not, it's been way too long, but one of us would cross the progression marker for whatever the mission is, and all of a sudden the other one just gets teleported from wherever the heck they were to the new area. Incredibly jarring. Like I'd be like, oh hey, I want to go look over here because I'm obsessed with looking for the dog tags.
Sure.
So I'm always checking all the nooks and crannies, and I'm heading toward a cranny, and then all of a sudden I'm next to Chris, and like, what just happened? I have no idea. There's like no transition, nothing visually, except you are suddenly somewhere else. It's very weird.
I've had a related bug, which is there's the animation where usually Marcus is on the radio, so he's got a couple fingers to his ear, and he's walking very slowly, and he's talking typically with Anya, who, being the only female representation in Gears of War, don't worry, only utters a couple of lines and is hardly ever seen. On occasion, I have him doing the dialogue before a scene in the middle of the fight. So here he is wandering around at a snail's pace with his finger on his ear, and he's being shot at by 5 locusts. He's not taking any damage because the game has decided that they're still in the middle of a cutscene, but it's visually jarring, and certainly means I'd better take cover real quick after he's done talking to Anya.
That aspect, the walking super slow while holding 2 fingers up to their ears and talking thing, I hate it so much. It's just like, you're just moving along at a nice pace, exploring, and then all of a sudden they decide they have to talk to Anya, and they can't talk to Anya and move quickly at the same time, so all of a sudden you're just slow to a crawl, and you're not allowed to do anything except walk at a snail's pace while asking Anya questions, and I hate it so much.
Well, it's how they hid the loading, Caitlin.
Yeah. It's like, come on. Stop talking in the middle of this.
So can we talk a little bit about some of the sequels, at least in comparison to Gears of War Reloaded?
Yeah.
Because I remember finding the sequels progressively less good. And part of it, I think, is what I will call the Resident Evil 6 problem. And that is the desire to have ever more elaborate set pieces. Because I remember one moment in particular, we may even have been playing co-op Caitlin online somewhere. I think it was Gears of War Judgment, maybe it was Gears of War 4. I don't know. There were a lot of them. And I was just wandering around out of cover, gunning down Locust all the time. And I'm like, this does not feel like what I remember enjoying about Gears of War.
Yeah.
And sure enough, when I first fired up Gears of War Reloaded, and I started dying on the normal difficulty level because I'd been flanked by some mook, I'm like, oh, this is what I remember liking about the game. It's not super hard, but you have to pay attention and you have to stay in cover because it's dangerous not to be in cover. And yes, again, that was abused by later games. But it really works in the context of just having a solid combat engine with satisfying weaponry and halfway decent enemy types. And the desire to have ever bigger and flashier things where suddenly you're murdering 27 heavy giant aliens or whatever. That's not to say that there aren't great set pieces in Gears of War Reloaded. Like, I still love the fights against Berserkers. Those are great.
Yeah.
Really well done. I thought they're exceptional. They set them up really well. They lead to something, and you have to be a little bit careful about how to approach it, whatever. But frankly, I really feel like the subsequent ones had an overemphasis on set pieces, really ratcheted down the difficulty level, and consequently made the game feel boring.
Yeah, I mean, my Gears of War history, like I played Gears of War 2, Gears of War 3. I think I bought some of the others, but I never finished any of them, just because after Gears of War 3, I believe I had a hard time getting into them. I know at one point, Marcus and Dom are not the main characters, right? But I don't remember when that happened.
Yes.
Was that after 3?
I think so. I think after 3, you play as like his son or something. It's a whole thing.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I played any of them. I did try Gears of War. Is there a 6 now?
5. 5 is the last one.
Is it 5?
The most recent one.
I guess I played 5, and there was this whole thing about how you're supposed to be able to play with 3 people, but then one of them ends up playing the robot. And I was playing the robot, and I was like, oh, this is really boring and horrible, and I never want to do this again. So I only played, like, one act of the new Gears of War, because it was not designed for 3-player.
My chief complaint about Gears of War Reloaded, independently of the bugs, is they really haven't updated the game at all. Like, one thing I remember, and this was an early indication, they retconned the hammer burst so that it was a different weapon. They changed it from another fully automatic assault rifle to a semi-automatic assault rifle, so it was more different. Fine.
Okay.
And so I was curious which version of the hammer burst you were going to encounter in Gears of War Reloaded, the one in Gears of War 1 or the one in subsequent ones. It's the one in Gears of War 1. They didn't change it at all. I'm a little bit disappointed they didn't bring in the Horde mode, which is a co-op multiplayer mode where you're just facing waves of enemies.
Yeah, that was very fun.
I was kind of surprised they didn't include it in Gears of War Reloaded. They literally didn't add any content that wasn't in the previous Ultimate Edition. So there's no ability to play multiplayer against bots. There's no Horde mode. So all the multiplayer modes that I used to actually use are not there now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at least Horde mode would have been a really nice, like, Horde mode with co-op. I don't know. It's disappointing because I remember really enjoying the Horde mode. I mean, I always like Horde modes. I just like, my friends and I being ganged up upon by a bunch of enemies and trying to take them out. It's very funny to me, 20 years later, that still you'll see a Steam review of something, and the biggest complaint is, oh, look at all that waist-high debris. Wonder what that's for. It's like, oh boy, it's really a whole thing. Although I did find myself wondering why there was a random, what was it, like a dryer or a washing machine in some random tunnels that I was going through. It's like, okay, I mean, I guess this was nice to be able to hide behind, but why? Why is it here?
The level design makes no sense. The number of times where the other squad radios in and says, we've hit a dead end, And the explanation is, no, just keep going. We'll meet up later. It's like this. No human would act this way in real life.
That's
Which is
not
the
what the word
blithe
dead end means, or the phrase.
and have the blithe confidence that in a war zone sooner or later, so long as you keep making progress, whatever that means, you'll end up in the same place at the same time somehow. It always shakes out. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, so you'd mentioned the NPCs being basically immune to permanently dying during a cutscene where, they'll be standing at the krill and die and res and die and res and die and res. During the level which introduced the krill, before I remembered the whole thing with the krill being that you can't be in the dark, we're all talking and Baird is like, oh, we're eating and, everybody's obsessed with Cole because they found out that he played some sports, blah, blah, blah. I wandered into the darkness and I cut that cutscene short because I died and we got a game over and we had to start over. So,
yeah,
player characters not immune.
Pre-publication for 5 Hot Seconds, Gears of War was trying to be a survival horror game. Like, early builds really leaned into a kind of horror angle. I'm very glad they ditched that and instead leaned into being dumb.
Yeah. The krill level was kind of interesting, like with...
Totally.
I really liked being able to shoot out the lights over the enemies and getting the enemies killed. That was really fun. My spouse was pushing the giant burning car in order to get us through one really dark street. And I was walking in front, and I stopped, and then he pushed the car into me, which thankfully is fine. I just end up standing on top of the burning car. But of course, that also lifted me out of cover, so all of a sudden I'm getting shot by a whole bunch of mooks. I don't know, it was just really fun.
The krill were great and well implemented in that level, but they were also implemented in the bugbear of early 21st century game design. We had abandoned escort missions, and we then leaned hard into the perfunctory vehicle section.
Yes. Yes, we did.
It's there. It's super perfunctory, and it's not good.
So in single player, how does that play out? Do you have to do both the driving and the aiming at the, flashlight? Uh-huh.
One of your squad mates complains or alerts you to the presence of krill. You stop, you hit a button, and then you're occupying the turret.
Oh my god.
When you're done shooting, you hit the button again, and then you start driving again.
Okay, it is much better co-op, because one of you is controlling the giant flashlight, the other one's driving, and thankfully, just by virtue of turning the flashlight on, it'll cut the engine for Chris while he's driving the car. So you don't have to communicate too much, you just do stuff, and it worked out pretty well. I suspect it feels much better in co-op.
Yeah, so all in all, I've been kind of surprised by how much I've been enjoying Gears of War Reloaded. Again, I'm not 100% sure how much of this is nostalgia, but mechanically it's really good. The gunplay is really well done.
Yeah.
I'm surprisingly charmed by the slabs of concrete in all the different kinds of slabs of concrete.
Yep.
And it's just been a very enjoyable experience. And it's a shame that this formula was basically ruined by over-iteration and lazy copy-pasting for so many years after the original Gears of War. And it's also kind of a shame that the sequels didn't live up to the original.
Yeah, that's Gears of War Reloaded. All right, so now we can move on to some shameless hyping of upcoming titles, what we call Shout. I was taking a nap and didn't remember to come up with something to shout, so I'm not shouting out anything. But I am excited for whatever it is that Mark is going to shout out. Mark, what are you excited for?
You ever download a demo and suddenly it's 2 hours later and you're still playing it?
I understand the feeling. I'm not sure that's ever literally happened, but...
So I got alerted to Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch, and this is a roguelite tactical RPG thing. And it turns out that, structurally speaking, this instantiation of that formula, because I know a number of other games have done that as well, is really, really well done, because the battles are just the right length. You move along, you've got the roguelite structure, you can pick a fight for various kinds of bennies. You only have a total of 6 squad members at a time, and so they're not built on huge maps based on endurance more than anything else. Nonetheless, some of the fights have interesting victory conditions, Like, I've already seen more variety in the 2-hour demo in terms of victory conditions than I think in the entirety of Fire Emblem Three Houses. That's not a knock on Three Houses. It's just all the missions are murder everyone, as opposed to Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch, where a number of them were try to escape or prevent these people from escaping or what have you. And it's been very satisfying. I like all the characters so far. I like the mechanical elements. Everyone has 2 weapon sets and you can swap between them without taking any actions. And so it's fluid and dynamic in a way that a lot of other multi-weapon set games aren't in a tactical level, because frequently, it costs your turn, and that's never a good idea. Usually it's better to keep on fighting suboptimally with the worst weapon set than to waste a turn swapping. It's really, really cool. It is in early access. It is not a real game yet. So I had a great time with the demo. I love how for a lot of these tactical RPGs, the demos are just absurdly generous. It's like, yeah, here, have 5-6 hours of gameplay. We don't care. Yeah. And I had to stop myself from playing because I didn't want to play too much of the unfinished demo early access version. I'm now super looking forward to it being released. There's the original game called Lost Eidolons, which looks very different in terms of the graphics engine and its presentation, but mechanically looks very similar. So I'm looking forward to trying that. I picked that up for a couple bucks. And I'm just super enthusiastic about Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch. I can't wait for it to be released.
That's awesome. Is there any word on when it will become a real game?
It's early access, Caitlin. They have a series of lies in the why early access section, but I would encourage people to put no stock in anything they say. I don't even bother checking anymore. I used to check. I used to be like, oh, we expect to be in early access for something like 6 to 12 months. Oh, really? Early access started in 2016, and it still hasn't been released. I think this may be what we call an exaggeration. So I just don't get my hopes up anymore on that. It'll come when it comes.
Awesome. That is really exciting. Maybe I'll have to try it. Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch. You'll have to let us know, too, how the original Lost Eidolons game is, if and when you get around to it.
It is definitely on the list. I have 0 games in a backlog to play, but at some point I intend on trying Lost Eidolons. If for no other reason than to find out what an Eidolon is and how it got lost.
Yes. Very important. All right. With that is the end of this episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital. If you would like to support us, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/amfad. And as always, we hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.
Play some great games, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at allmybestfriendsaredigital@gmail.com. Hope to see you again soon.